Welcome to Harmony for the General Public. My name is Barney. And in today's first episode, I'm going to explain what is harmony exactly. And I will explain it for anyone. So you don't need any prior musical knowledge, any music theory. All you need is hopefully a love for music or minimum an interest, okay? I'm going to explain what exactly harmony is, but I can guarantee you're not going to believe me. I promise you're not going to believe me, because if you believe me and you understood me, you would immediately turn off this video. But you're not going to, because it won't make sense. And why won't it make sense? Because it's simple. And it's the things that are the simplest that take very long to accept, right? Like he's cheating on you. You know, it's hard to accept that. But sometimes the truth is the truth. Now, all jokes aside, harmony is a story, okay? Harmony is a story. Now, I know what you think. Well, that may... But harmony is a story. So, for example, I have a story here. It's Salammbô by Gustave Flaubert. It's a French author, okay? I think it was written in the 1800s, though it's set way further back. And I'm reading it, okay? And it has a beginning, has an ending, has a climax. There's certain peaks. We think something's going to happen, something bad happens, and it's resolved, okay? So all that is a story. Now, of course, there's the larger story, okay? I would say the larger story of this is basically there are two rival cities. And one is stronger than the other. That's the overall story. But then there's like the smaller level, and then, of course, every single detail. Okay? So, in order to illustrate what exactly harmony is, I'm going to be citing my own work. How presumptuous, okay? But luckily, there'll be no copyright issues that way. So, I will be playing excerpts from my first orchestra work, which is called Help Is on the Way for Orchestra. It's in 5 movements, and it's what I call an adventure for orchestra. Okay? Let's begin. Now that was just the very, very introduction of Help Is on the Way. That was from the first movement. The whole entire work is about 37 minutes to 45 minutes of music. So it's just a very, very small smidgen. But there's a lot that we can talk about, okay? So with this music that you heard, you could create a story should you wish to. Now, what would the story be? Well, given that I can't see you in front of me, I will make up a story with you together, okay? So, for example, the very opening, one could say, and this is not what I was thinking, of course, when I was writing the music, but it's just a story, okay? One could say that it feels like you enter a room at the end of an argument. Have you ever done that? You enter a room and like the tension's high and you hear the last words, "I'm never talking to you again," or something horrible, right? And then both people leave and there's just that tension that is still there, but you know, is dissipating, but there's like a question like, what happened? What's going on? So let me play that one more time and tell me if you see or feel that. Okay. And then it builds, okay, and then we get something else. So something turbulent happens. I don't know. I don't know how to describe that. Maybe you can describe it for me. Okay. Perhaps I could say it's like you're remembering how angry that person made you, right? You're like, oh, how dare she talk to me? How dare he talk to me like that? And you know, blister, right? Okay. And then you kind of calm down. Okay. But not for long. It's a story. We got to keep it interesting. Well, all these things I just described is harmony, okay? So for the general public, harmony is a story, okay? But for us as composers and kind of more learned musicians, there are technical terms to describe all the things that I just illustrated, okay? But for the general public, it's just a story. Let's now turn to question and response, okay? So I'm going to play one half, and then I'm going to play the other half, okay? Idea 1. And of course, that would be idea 2. Okay. However, to get from idea 1 to idea 2, we often like to have what we call a transition or a bridge, okay? Because though idea 1 is its own idea and idea 2 is its own idea, if we just put them next to each other side by side, it doesn't quite work. So that's why we create a transition, which sounds as follows. I wasn't supposed to play the connection part, but still. So that middle part where I just played, that's what we call a transition, okay? And let me just play it one more time. Right? Sounds kind of awkward, right? It doesn't work in and of itself. Okay, so it's another thing to understand when we're talking about stories or harmony, that there are certain things that don't sound right in and of themselves. That's because they have a very functional purpose, which is to connect to more important ideas. Now let me glue them all together, and I hope you'll still be able to perceive. Now don't do this when you're listening to the performance, because then you're not going to enjoy the music, but this is a different way of listening. Okay, because if you do this when you go to an actual performance, you can lose all enjoyment. Don't want that. And please tell me that I'm a good teacher and that you understood. You heard 2 sections, though we can't quite say sections because this is a very long piece. It's about 45 minutes. So what we're hearing is a very tiny part. But still, within what we heard, there is kind of like an A, okay, and then a B. So A is one way. I'm not going to play it again. Kind of somber, and then B is okay. It's very, very dramatic. Okay. So to connect them, we have that little transition. Okay, and A and B is very important for harmony, so don't throw it away completely. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about phrases. Okay, so in a book. For example, I don't know why I keep showing this book because, it's not my book. But in a book, we have, many phrases and words, chapters, maybe some part one, part two, okay? And that forms the totality of the book. But of course, it is composed or written based off of smaller phrases or fragments, okay? So the same exists in music, okay? And music is really a book, but in sound, okay? So think of a novel. All the elements you're going to find in a novel, you're going to find in music. Some light modifications, but you know what I mean. Let me play two phrases for you. That's one phrase. Now, some people say, oh, that's not a phrase, it's too small. Okay, whatever. That's a phrase. Okay, that's a complete idea. Okay, perhaps one I would want more, but that's still one idea. Are we okay here? Okay, no controversy there. Okay. Okay, another idea or phrase. And then what we can do is the following. So what I just did is I combined the two, okay? So a work of art or work of music is not just one long, great phrase, which of course is how we experience it, right? We hear it from start to finish. So in a way, a whole symphony is one long phrase, okay? But the long phrase is composed of smaller phrases and even smaller, like we just heard. Just like in a book, it's one whole experience. Now, ideally, you read the book from start to finish without, even using the bathroom, but of course, no one does that. But overall, it is one larger experience, but you can divide that experience up and break it down all the way to like sentence, okay? But the sentences lead to paragraphs, to chapitres, as we say in French, so on and so forth. Let's talk about melody, okay? So melody is quite deceptive, okay? Because it attracts our attention and garners all of our attention, but it does very little to actually influence the harmony. How could you say that? Yes, I am going to claim it on live TV, okay? That melody, now I don't want you to think melody is totally inconsequential, okay? It is the surface, but of course, what's beyond the surface, well, what's underneath, and that is the harmony which contains melody. Let me show you what I'm talking about so you don't have to be all confused, because I know that wasn't very clear. So I just played a melody, but it was naked, okay, exposed, okay? And so to give it more oomph or to give it meaning, we add harmony, for example. Doesn't it have more of a context? Because I could take this same melody, I'll play it one more time. And I could add a different harmony or a different story to it. For example, totally different, right? How would you describe that? Well, it's too short. I would say it just feels like we're growing, something's changing, right? Very, very different from the original and correct version, okay? So what I want you to understand is the melody, which is what attracts our ear, and it's what we notice, it's what we retain, right? When you sing the melody, you're singing that. You're not singing the harmony, though you may be feeling the harmony. But underneath it, there is harmony, okay? There's a story, a larger story or scene that kind of envelopes it, okay, and gives it meaning and context. And again, that's harmony. Harmony is a story. Now, we're going to talk about spacing. Okay, so don't get freaked out. Spacing, spacing, spacing. Okay, so spacing can also affect the harmony or the story. So what I mean by that, and keep in mind here, this is an orchestra work. So I am playing on piano, so you have to try to use your imagination a little bit if you can. But if you have a little bit trouble understanding, perhaps you'll have to wait till the world premiere of Help Is on the Way in 5 movements for orchestra. Now, let me go ahead and play the opening chord. That's the chord. That's the harmony. Doesn't matter what's happening on top. Doesn't matter. Well, it does, but less so. Okay? Now, if we examine this chord, if I look at my score, for example, I have my trombones. You know the trombone? It's the instrument that has the slide, okay? And I have it on these bottom 3 notes. Now, it's going to be hard to kind of imagine what the trombones sound like, especially if you're not, a composer. But this feels very somber, right? Doesn't it feel very somber? Well, on the trombone, it also corresponds with a very, not a super low register, but low-ish, where it's kind of has a kind of dullish or somber-like quality, which will fit the mood I'm seeking. Okay, and there's something also kind of tight. Do you feel that tightness versus this? Now that's the same chord. It's the same notes, just put up a little bit higher, a lot higher, and it has a more open quality. Perhaps you could say somber, and again, words aren't accurate when it comes to music, but something's changed. It's a little more open, okay? And that's because of the register it's in, okay? So when I have the trombones here, it almost feels like the music is thick, like you're wading through mud and you have difficulty moving, which is what I wanted, okay? So something to think about. Now, when you hear this opening chord, amidst it, the cellos also have some notes. Listen carefully. It's the cellos, okay? And notice the difference. First of all, it's fewer notes, but also there's a more open quality. So harmony is not just the notes necessarily, right? It's also the different micro stories going on. So on one hand, we have that tightness, muddiness of the trombones, but this openness kind of enveloping it with the trombones, okay? Never forget, harmony is a story. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the final sum. What do I mean the final sum? In this now infamous chord, because I don't know how you cannot recognize this chord now. I've played it 5 million times, but it's okay if you can. Okay? In it, you probably didn't notice because this is not the live orchestra version, but hopefully you'll be able to hear it one day. Amidst this, I have my violas doing the following. Sounds totally different, right? And let me play the opening melody with just the violas and not the entire chord, not this. Okay, let me just play the opening. Oh, sorry, I was in the wrong register. Apologize. Don't, that's not the music, that's not the music, that's not the right music. It's not the same. It's not the same music. There's something missing. Now, in contrast to that It may feel a bit refreshing, but this is just in contrast to it, okay? On its own, it doesn't communicate the same story. Listen carefully to the both versions. Verses. Quite a difference. Okay, quite a difference. So what can you conclude from this information? Well, harmony, or telling a story, is not just the details, okay? So yes, the violas are on here, but there's other things taking place. We have the trombones, very thick and muddy. We have the open cellos, and then we have the violas. And there's actually other instruments, but let's focus on strings for now, okay? Now we're going to talk about something a little bit controversial. Why not in a masterclass on harmony for general public? So the next concept I'm going to communicate to you. Now, just a side note, I did a lot of my harmony training in Paris, France. Okay, spent 5 years in Paris, okay, studying harmony and some other things, okay? And the next concept that I'm going to explain to you, if I were to translate it directly from French into English, it would be profoundly offensive to some viewers. So I therefore have taken the liberty to kind of change the wording so that in English the meaning and the intent is there, but the the harshness of the words is taken away. Okay, so now we have notes that belong and notes that don't belong. Okay, and try not to get too sensitive, but unfortunately in music some notes belong to the chord and others don't. Let me demonstrate for you. Listen carefully to the flute, okay? So we have this chord, and then the flute comes in here. Notice how that blends in perfectly. I'm going to play each note very slowly. This does not belong to the chord. Does this match with the chord? No. Listen to the next note. That blends very well. Not quite. It's not as egregious here. But notice how our ear kind of wants to resolve it. Either down or up. Okay. Okay. So those notes that do not belong are notes that don't belong, right? Now, they are very expressive, are they not? Right? Traditionally, with this particular kind of note, we like to resolve it down because it kind of hangs in the air. Okay. So you probably didn't notice that some of these notes didn't belong because of the tempo. So let me play up the tempo. Okay. So one of the beautiful things about harmony is that if you stop or you play music very slowly, it may not work for our ears. And that's because some of these expressive notes that we get all, hot and bothered for, right? If you prolong them too much, then the fact that they don't belong to the chord becomes more obvious and it can actually hurt the ear or be a little bit displeasurable. So one of the tasks for the composer is to kind of balance or strike the balance between notes that belong and notes that don't belong. We like the tension, right? right? We like that tension, but we don't want to linger too long. In fact, if you've ever tried to study Bach's music, some of the piano works, and you play it slowly, you may discover that the music feels very, very dissonant, okay? And it is dissonant, but it's because of the speed, he doesn't linger as much, okay? So it has a short, and then it continues and it resolves, and it has that kind of flinching and like relaxing, okay? So that's all part of harmony. When you hear the music and you hear this kind of wailing, okay, imagine the singer, right? But it's because we have a harmony in the background. How could we possibly understand this note if there's nothing it goes with? Now, maybe you still hear the passion in it because you're remembering the harmony, but without it, it's nothing. Well, it's not nothing. That's mean to say. But do you understand what I'm trying to say? Okay, so harmony is not just notes that belong to the chord. There's also notes that don't belong to the chord, but they create a lot of expression and vibrancy to the music. Now let's talk about delayed harmony, okay? One of the beautiful things about harmony is sometimes it's actually incomplete, but the ear has no awareness of that and thinks it's complete. So harmony will do a trick on you, do a magic trick on you. For example, in this transition that I previously cited, now, we haven't heard it for a while, so it feels a bit naked. And it does feel naked in the music, but not for long. Listen carefully. Now listen to the chord together. It's a chord, right? We hear the whole context. And it sounds very similar to the opening. It's not quite the same story, but certainly it's much more similar than... That's completely different, right? So there's different flavors of variations of the same story, okay? Let's get back to this transition, okay? Now, in real time, the ear may perceive these notes as very exposed, like what harmony does it belong to? But after it is completed, the ear then perceives that the whole time it was complete, when in fact it wasn't complete. Does that make sense? Now we feel it's complete. So harmony is kind of like it crosses before and after, shall we say. It kind of goes into a time warp. In addition, things that happen before can still give us impression of what a harmony is. Okay, for example, what happened before this? Listen to the harmony below, okay, the backdrop. Pause. But even though this is exposed, we were still hearing this a second ago. So even though we pause, we're still hearing it. Let me put it one more time. Do you hear it now? Because I played it. So what I want you to understand is that harmony, though we experience it in real time, we're actually not hearing it complete a lot of the times. There's many times that we're perceiving it to be complete, when in fact it isn't. So again, this points to the magic tricks that composers are putting on you. So when you hear a beautiful work of music, it is a magic spell. They are placing you under spell and giving you the impression that certain things are happening when they are in fact not happening. Okay? Now we need to get to a fundamental concept that is so fundamental I didn't dare tell you at the very beginning because I knew you would forget. I'm sorry. but I'm a teacher and I know how students operate. They forget very easily. So I had to wait until this very special, unique moment to tell you. And that's a term. This is the first real musical term that I'm going to introduce to you today, aside maybe from transition, but we kind of know what that meant even without knowing about music. And that's called the tonic, okay? The tonic. So when I play the following, this note that completes that chord is called a tonic, okay? Now, why is it called a tonic? Well, tonic means the home, okay? It's just the word we use for the home. When we hear this note, we feel we're at home. Or when we hear the chord based on this note, we feel at home. Right? We could hear it here. We could space it differently. But still, this note that kind of binds them all together is like the root. You could also think of it as, okay? So the technical term is the tonic, but you could also think of it as the root, and it kind of binds it all together. Okay, now we're going to learn about prolonged notes, and to understand this, we have to think about earth and sky. So think of this visual as I'm explaining things to you. So let's listen to the violins and the flutes. I don't know if you can hear it on this piano, and it'll definitely be more obvious when you hear the actual orchestra version. But I'm actually holding some of these notes. Okay, listen carefully. I'll play it slower. Do you hear it now? But that sounds a bit brutal, as they say in French, but each note comes in individually, so it doesn't feel so bad, right? And that's kind of fancy, is it not? However, doesn't sound like my piece, right? That's my piece. Okay. Now, it's not exactly how we saw it before because it was played, individually. But these are the notes, okay? So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that in harmony, when we learn about harmony, we have what's in the sky. But ultimately, I'm sorry, but what's in the ground is the ultimate decider, okay? So yes, what's in the sky, there's something very expressive, right? We learned about that before with the notes that don't belong, right? And this is certainly expressive harmony here, okay? Now, what happens if we were to reverse these chords? So we have this up high. What if we put it down low? Give me 1 second to figure this out. That is not my piece. Okay, I hope we can all agree. That is not my piece. It's not even close to my piece. Okay? So I just reversed it and I don't recognize my piece. Now, let's go one step further and I will take what was in the bottom before and let's put it up top. Okay? That is not my piece. It's not my piece. That is not my piece. But it's the same chords. I have the bottom chord up top. I have the top chord on bottom. But that is not my piece. So I'm sorry, but I need to very quickly rearrange this so I can feel comfortable again. That's my piece. Now, of course, in the piece, it's a little bit slower. But still, that's my piece. So what does that tell you? Well, harmony is the totality okay? And what's on bottom really counts, okay? What's on top matters as well. But the bottom is the ultimate decider. And when you move things around, the harmony is going to change. The story is going to change. How would you describe this following story? Now, in this context, it feels a bit brutal, as I previously stated, right? But there's ways you can make it work. I'll just improvise, for example, on this harmony. Okay, so you can do stuff with it, but it is certainly not my work, and don't you dare reverse the harmony in my work, because that's copyright infringement, or that, I don't know. We need to find the crime, because that's not my work. It's not my work. Okay.